That skill presents adding and subtracting algebraic expressions. Recall that an algebraic expression has got terms in it separated by the plus or the minus sign. The individual terms can be variables or constants or the product of variables and constants. Two terms are called like terms when they have the same variables raised to the same exponent on them. For example, if we have a x, y square over here, and if we have a, let's say, x, y square over here, this term and this term are like terms, but if we have a x square, y square over here, this term and this term are not like terms, and this term and this term are not like terms because this is the odd one out having a x square on it. Let me just write that down. This and this are called like terms. On each term, the constant number that is multiplied with the variables is called the coefficient of that variable or that term. So if we have a 2 here with a negative sign before it, so we would say the coefficient of xy square on this term is negative 2. Similarly, if we have a 3 here, we would say the coefficient of x square y square is positive 3. If we do not see a coefficient, it indicates that the coefficient is 1 because 1 times anything is that number itself. And that works for variables because at the end of the day, variables are nothing but numbers that are just hidden from our views. So if you don't see a coefficient there, feel free to assume there's a 1 here. Now consider this. Let's say you have a basket of fruits in which there are 2 apples and 3 oranges and let's say another 3 apples. So if I were to ask you to combine them or add them up, what would you do? You cannot add the 2 apples with the 3 oranges. You could say, okay, I would add the 2 apples with the 3 apples, so I have 5 apples. So you add apples to apples, and then you have 3 oranges. The idea is, in algebra, you can combine like terms, just like you can combine apples with apples, and you cannot combine unlike terms, which means you cannot add or subtract unlike terms because you cannot add or subtract apples with oranges. And the way to do that is just to add up the coefficients of the like terms together with the signs. So if you were to combine this x square or a 1x square with this negative 2x square, you would do a 1 minus 2, which gives you a negative 1. So when you combine them, you get negative 1xy square. You can get rid of the 1 that's not required. It's always implied. So that is equal to negative xy square. So if you were to simplify this, this would be negative xy square, the 2 like terms combined, plus you cannot add the oranges. The 3x square y square stays like that. Maybe you could bring this over to this side. For 1, we usually write the higher powers at the beginning of an expression, and then we tend to, it's a norm, it's not a rule, I can't say that's a rule, but we tend to push the negative quantities towards the end. So this could be rewritten as 3x square y square minus x y square. Let's try a couple of examples. Let's try and simplify 4x minus 3y minus 3x minus 1 plus 2y. Our first job is to bring the terms with x together and the terms with y together and the constant separate from the terms having the variables. So we are going to rewrite this as 4x minus 3x, the x's together, minus 3y plus 2y, and finally the constant term, which is negative 1. 4x minus 3x is 1x, that can be written down as x, and minus 3y plus 2y is a negative 1y. Therefore, we just write that down as minus y, minus 1. Let's try another one. The length of a rectangle is 5y units and its width is 2 units less than its length. Write an expression for the perimeter of the rectangle. So we have a rectangle whose length is 5y. Opposite sides on a rectangle are the same length, so this is also 5y. And then the width is 2 units less than its length. The length is 5y, the width is 2 units less, so that's 5y minus 2. And therefore this side is also 5y minus 2. We need to write an expression for the perimeter of the rectangle. Now the perimeter is just the sum of all 4 sides. Therefore this is going to be equal to 5y plus 5y minus 2 plus, you could put a parenthesis around this, it doesn't really matter, just to make it more readable that this is this side, plus 5y again plus 5y minus 2. In the next step, you could open up the parentheses, 5y plus 5y minus 2 plus 5y plus 5y minus 2. Bring all the y's together, the like terms. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 5y plus 5y plus 5y plus 5y minus 2 and a minus 2. Minus 2, minus 2. 5y plus 5y plus 5y plus 5y is 20y. It's like saying what's 5 apples plus 5 apples plus 5 apples plus 5 apples. That's 20 apples. So this is 20y. And minus 2 and another minus 2 gives you a negative 4. Therefore the perimeter is 20y minus 4.